In today's video, we're going to be reading from this book, Charlotte's Web, written by E.B. White and pictures by Garth Williams. It is published by HarperCollins Publishers. And this reading today is being presented with permission from Access Copyright on behalf of the publisher. Hello and welcome back for some more Charlotte's Web. It's an exciting day as today we are going to meet the character for whom this book is titled after. We're going to meet Charlotte. And as always, we're going to take a look at the worksheets that we are going to be completing after we finish reading today. So in your booklet, make sure that you've read through the vocabulary words. Now there is one word on the back of the vocabulary page where the definition was forgotten, and that's this word right here. It's hard to see that. Midges. And midges are just little tiny flies. Okay. And then today you have a question sheet. There's not a lot of room to write, so I'm not expecting you to write incomplete sentences. But when you do your prediction and your inference, then I would like you to use sentences, please. So just for these last two boxes, okay? Let's just go over the question so we know what kind of information we want to pay close attention to. Why was it hard for Wilbur to sleep? How many eggs does the goose have to warm? What does salutations mean? What color is Charlotte? What does Charlotte eat? How does Charlotte get her food? Charlotte gave a good reason why spiders ate flies. What was her reason? What did Charlotte learn from her family? And then we're going to be making a prediction at the end. What do you think Templeton will do with the egg? And if you remember Templeton from the last chapter, he is the rat that lives under Wilbur's trough where Wilbur eats. And then we're going to make an inference. And an inference is like a prediction because it's also a guess, but it's not a guess about what's going to happen next. It is making a guess about why something has happened or why something hasn't happened, or just making a guess about what something means. We have to use clues from the story, and we also have to use our own thinking and put those clues and our thinking together to come up with an idea when we're making an inference. So sometimes this type of question can be hard for students because you can't just read and find the answer right in the book. It's got to come a little bit from what you know in the story and also from what you can think about yourself. Okay. So what did Charlotte learn from her family? We talked about that question. Okay. And so that's the worksheet that we'll be doing there. And then on the back, we have another character attributes. So we're getting really good at these now. I won't go through all the parts because you know what that's all about, and you're going to be doing that for Charlotte. Now, remember, you can go back to the other characters that we've done. Who have we done? We've done Fern, we've done the goose, we've done the lamb last time, and you can add information to their character attributes worksheet as you learn more about that character while we're reading. Okay, let's begin. Chapter 5, Charlotte. The night seemed long. Wilbur's stomach was empty and his mind was full. And when your stomach is empty and your mind is full, it's always hard to sleep. I know sometimes I lay awake when I am thinking about something, or especially if I'm either worried or very excited too about the next day. A dozen times during the night, Wilbur woke and stared into the blackness, listening to the sounds and trying to figure out what time it was. A barn is never perfectly quiet. Even at midnight, there is usually something stirring. The first time he woke, he heard Templeton gnawing a hole in the grain bin. Templeton's teeth scraped loudly against the wood and made quite a racket. That crazy rat, thought Wilbur. Why does he have to stay up all night grinding his clashers and destroying people's property? Why can't he go to sleep like any decent animal? The second time Wilbur woke, he heard the goose turning on her nest and chuckling to herself. What time is it? Whispered Wilbur to the goose. Probably, about 11:30, said the goose. Why aren't you asleep, Wilbur? Too many things on my mind, said Wilbur. Well, said the goose, that's not my trouble. I have nothing at all on my mind, but I've too many things under my behind. Have you ever tried to sleep while sitting on, 8 eggs? No, replied Wilbur. I suppose it is uncomfortable. How long does it take a goose egg to hatch? Approximately 30 days all told, answered the goose. But I cheat a little. On warm afternoons, I just pull a little straw over the eggs and I go out for a walk. Wilbur yawned and went back to sleep. In his dreams, he heard again the voice saying, I'll be a friend to you. Go to sleep. You'll see me in the morning. About half an hour before dawn, Wilbur woke and listened. The barn was still dark. The sheep lay motionless. Even the goose was quiet. Overhead on the main floor, nothing stirred. The cows were resting, the horses dozed. Templeton had quit work and gone off somewhere on an errand. The only sound was a slight scraping noise from the rooftop, where the weather vanes swung back and forth. Wilbur loved the barn when it was like this, calm and quiet, waiting for light. Day is almost here, he thought. Through a small window, a faint gleam appeared. One by one, the stars went out. Wilbur could see the goose a few feet away. She sat with head tucked under a wing. Then he could see the sheep and the lambs. The sky lightened. Oh, beautiful day! Here it is at last. Today I shall find my friend. Wilbur looked everywhere. He searched his pen thoroughly. He examined the window ledge, stared up at the ceiling. But he saw nothing new. Finally, he decided he would have to speak up. He hated to break the lovely stillness of dawn by using his voice, but he couldn't think of any other way to locate the mysterious new friend who was nowhere to be seen. So Wilbur cleared his throat. Attention, please, he said in a loud, firm voice. Will the party who addressed me at bedtime last night kindly make himself or herself known by giving an appropriate sign or signal? Wilbur paused and listened. All the other animals lifted their heads and stared at him. Wilbur blushed. But he was determined to get in touch with his unknown friend. Attention, please, he said. I will repeat the message. Will the party who addressed me at bedtime last night kindly speak up? Please tell me where you are, if you are my friend. The sheep looked at each other in disgust. Stop your nonsense, Wilbur, said the oldest sheep. If you have a new friend here, you're probably disturbing his rest, and the quickest way to spoil a friendship is to wake somebody up in the morning before he is ready. How can you be sure your friend is an early riser? I beg everyone's pardon, whispered Wilbur. I didn't mean to be objectionable. He lay down meekly in the manure, facing the door. He did not know it, but his friend was very near. And the old sheep was right. The friend was still asleep. Now, I just thought of something that I could go back and add to my Wilbur character attributes page. He's very polite. So when he's realized that he's disturbed the other animals, right, I beg your pardon. So he didn't snap back at the sheep. The sheep's not talking very nice to him, but Wilbur didn't snap back. He was very polite in his response. Soon, Lurvy appeared with slops for breakfast. Wilbur rushed out, ate everything in a hurry, and licked the trough. The sheep moved off down the lane. The gander waddled behind them, pulling grass. And then, just as Wilbur was settling down for his morning nap, he heard again the thin voice that had addressed him the night before. "Salutations," said the voice. Wilbur jumped to his feet. What?" he cried. "Salutations," repeated the voice. "What are they, and where are you?" screamed Wilbur. "Please, please tell me where you are. And what are salutations?" This was one of our questions. "Salutations are greetings," said the voice. "When I say salutations, it's just my fancy way of saying hello or good morning. Actually, it's a silly expression, and I'm surprised that I used it at all. As for my whereabouts, that's easy. Look up here in the corner of the doorway. Here I am. Look, I'm waving." At last Wilbur saw the creature that had spoken to him in such a kindly way, stretched across the upper part of the doorway was a big spider web, and hanging from the top of the web down was a large gray spider. She was about the size of a gumdrop. She had 8 legs, and she was waving one of them at Wilbur in a friendly greeting. "See me now?" she asked. So there was some good description, or there was a good description by the author there about what Charlotte looks like. And so we can put some of that onto your Charlotte character attributes page. I know a lot of the other characters haven't been described by the author, so we've had to come up with that ourselves. "Oh, yes, indeed," said Wilbur. "Yes, indeed. How are you? Good morning. Salutations. Very pleased to meet you. What is your name, please? May I have your name?" "My name," said the spider, "is Charlotte." "Charlotte what?" asked Wilbur eagerly. "Charlotte A. Cavatica. But just call me Charlotte." "I think you're beautiful," said Wilbur. "Well, I am pretty," replied Charlotte. "There's no denying that." Now I'm making a connection to another character that we saw in a movie. Can you guess who? Mary Poppins. Yes, she was always thinking that she was so beautiful as well. "Almost all spiders are rather nice looking. I'm not as flashy as some, but I'll do. I wish I could see you, Wilbur, as clearly as you can see me." "Why can't you?" asked the pig. "I'm right here." "Yes, but I'm nearsighted," replied Charlotte. "I've always been dreadfully nearsighted." "It's good in some ways, not so good in others. Watch me wrap up this fly." A fly that had been crawling along Wilbur's trough had flown up and blundered into the lower part of Charlotte's web and was tangled in the sticky threads. And you do have a question about this, about how Charlotte catches the fly. The fly was beating its wings furiously, trying to break loose and free itself. "First," said Charlotte, "I dive at him." She plunged headfirst toward the fly. As she dropped, a tiny silken thread unwound from her rear end. "Next, I wrap him up." She grabbed the fly, threw a few jets of silk around it, and rolled it over and over, wrapping it so that it couldn't move. Wilbur watched in horror. He could hardly believe what he was seeing, and although he detested flies, he was sorry for this one. "There," said Charlotte. "Now I knock him out so he'll be more comfortable." She bit the fly. "He can't feel a thing now," she remarked. "He'll make a perfect breakfast for me." "You mean you eat flies?" gasped Wilbur. "Certainly. Flies, bugs, grasshoppers, choice beetles, moths, butterflies, tasty cockroaches, gnats, midges, those are little flies, daddy longlegs, centipedes, mosquitoes, crickets, anything that is careless enough to get caught in my web. I have to live, don't I?" Now there was a great big list of things that Charlotte eats. "Why, yes, of course," said Wilbur. "Do they taste good?" "Delicious, of course. I don't really eat them. I drink them. Drink their blood. I love blood," said Charlotte, and her pleasant thin voice grew even thinner and more pleasant. "Don't say that," groaned Wilbur. "Please don't say things like that." "Why not? It's true. And I have to say what is true. I am not entirely happy about my diet of flies and bugs, but it's the way I'm made. A spider has to pick up a living somehow or other, and I happen to be a trapper. I just naturally build a web and trap flies and other insects. My mother was a trapper before me. Her mother was a trapper before her. All our family have been trappers. Way back for thousands and thousands of years, we spiders have been laying for flies and bugs. It's a miserable inheritance, said Wilbur gloomily. He was sad because his new friend was so bloodthirsty. Yes, it is, agreed Charlotte, but I can't help it. I don't know how the first spider in the early days of the world happened to think up this fancy idea of spinning a web, but she did, and it was clever of her too. And since then, all of us spiders have had to work the same trick. It's not a bad pitch on the whole. It's cruel, replied Wilbur, who did not intend to be argued out of his position. Well, you can't talk, said Charlotte. You have your meals brought to you in a pail. Nobody feeds me. I have to get my own living. I live by my wits. I have to be sharp and clever, lest I go hungry. I have to think things out, catch what I can, take what comes. And it just so happens, my friend, that what comes is flies and insects and bugs. And furthermore, said Charlotte, shaking one of her legs, do you realize that if I didn't catch bugs and eat them, bugs would increase and multiply and get so numerous that they'd destroy the earth, wipe out everything? Really? Said Wilbur. I wouldn't want that to happen. Perhaps your web is a good thing after all. The goose had been listening to this conversation and chuckling to herself. There are a lot of things Wilbur doesn't know about life, she thought. He's really a very innocent little pig. And there's something else that we could add to Wilbur's character traits sheet. He's very innocent. He doesn't know a lot about the outside world yet. He doesn't even know what's going to happen to him around Christmas time. He has no idea that Mr. Zuckerman and Lurvy are plotting to kill him. And the goose raised herself a bit and poked her eggs a little further under her so that they would receive the full heat from her warm body and soft feathers. Now, if we think about what the goose is thinking and how Wilbur doesn't know what Mr. Zuckerman and Lurvy are plotting for him, why do you think at Christmas time is when this plan of theirs to kill Wilbur is going to happen? I wonder if he's going to be a Christmas ham for Christmas dinner. Charlotte stood quietly over the fly, preparing to eat it. Wilbur lay down and closed his eyes. He was tired from his wakeful night and from the excitement of meeting someone for the first time. A breeze brought him the smell of clover, the sweet-smelling world beyond his fence. Well, he thought, I've got a new friend all right, but what a gamble friendship is. Charlotte is fierce, brutal, scheming, bloodthirsty, everything I don't like. How can I learn to like her, even though she is pretty and, of course, clever? Wilbur was merely suffering the doubts and fears that often go with finding a new friend. So if you can think about times when you have met somebody for the first time and you're not quite sure whether they will make a good friend for you or not. You might want to be their friend, but there might be part of you that's just a little bit scared to have a new friend. I think that's what Wilbur's going through. In good time, he was to discover that he was mistaken about Charlotte. Underneath her rather bold and cruel exterior, so that's her outside, she had a kind heart, and she was to prove loyal and true to the very end. Now, what the author is doing right here is something called foreshadowing, and he's giving a little bit of a hint about something that's going to happen. In the future. And all we know is that Charlotte is going to be very loyal and true to Wilbur in the end. So I'm wondering what will happen in order for her to prove that. Okay, so now we've met Charlotte. And when you're answering your worksheets, remember to use the clues about what the character, what Charlotte is saying, doing, what the author has said about her to help you fill out that character attribute sheet. All right, I will see you next time.